Katie.
I'm Vinny, and this is Learn Real Good.
I'm excited to be back.
I love doing this podcast.
It feels like it's been a while since we did a recording.
Yeah, a little bit. It's been a bit.
They come out regularly, but we
Yes.
record them in sort of spurts, it feels like.
So intermittent.
Feast
we don't
and
know.
famine.
We don't know when they're going to come. It's like a surprise lurking around the corner.
We get a 2-minute warning, and then we just like head to our action stations.
That's right.
Slap on the phones and go. That's what I call headphones now, and just are ready to record.
Slap on the phones.
That's part of our new single coming out on Learn Real Good Records. Slap on the phones.
I always look forward to these.
I know, it's exciting.
We get to meet a guest, talk science, have a little laugh. It's a good time.
It's always fun. You've always got time for recording.
A lot of slogans coming out of you.
Yeah, I know. I'm a slogan machine. How have you been, Vinny? What's new with you?
I've been good. It's getting cold now, isn't it? Now we're recording this. I don't know when this is coming out, but right now it's the middle of fall. It's really near Halloween. And
you started vague with temperature, and I'm like, that's fine. So we'll probably come out before summer.
Right.
So this could be any
It could
time.
be
And then you
anytime.
got more and more specific.
No,
fall.
It's
I'm like,
October
okay,
24th
narrowing
at
it down.
12:07 p.m. in Montreal.
And you said fall, and I was like, wow, this
Let's
is
be
definitely going to be
specific.
dated.
Look, people don't, the mystery of when this is recorded is, it's nice to maintain, but maybe it's overrated.
Okay. Well, yeah, I love fall. It finally feels like fall. It's been like crazy warm, and now it's like cold. So I'm here for it. The real fall.
I do love fall. It's
Yeah.
my favorite season.
Yeah, right? The
Summer
wardrobe.
too hot, winter too cold, fall just right.
All the
Spring too
coats.
rainy.
Yeah.
Fall's not that rainy.
No, it's been rainy though. And that's our update of local weather here in Montreal. Who knows where you are listening to this, but thank you for listening.
Well, hopefully you have a fall wherever you are.
Yes,
it's a
that's
great
true.
season.
Yeah. And I've never lived somewhere not temperate, so I would really be jarred by
Yeah.
not having the four seasons.
Or like summer year round, where it's like 76 degrees Fahrenheit all year.
I need those changes.
I
I'd
love
be
the
very
changes.
lost, I feel.
Time-wise, every day would
Yeah.
feel the same.
And I feel like I would wake up and be like, I don't know what month it is.
No.
Okay, well, that's enough jibber jabber.
You want to get to some science facts?
Well, yeah. So let's remind our audience how this works. So
Yeah.
Vinny and I are going to share science facts, and we're going to bring on our fabulous
Yeah.
guest.
Yeah, this whole podcast is about sharing science facts with one another and having a little laugh along the way. So
Because
we got
science
some
is about sharing.
science, sharing, caring. They all live together.
Who goes first?
I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
So my science fact is, I guess, I don't know if this is surprising or sad or all of the above, or maybe just entirely predictably sad.
I'm prepared for some emotional response.
Yeah. So elephants.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
oh,
know where this
You
is
know where this is going. Okay.
Yeah, good story.
Should I stop?
No, please.
Elephants are hunted for their tusks. It's a very sad story.
Very sad.
Huge pressures on them population wise from poachers, and like basically you have to hire people around the clock to guard them and protect them from people trying to get their ivory from their tusks. So one of the things that have been noticed is that there's been a huge selective pressure on elephants to become tuskless.
Yes.
And so what they're noticing is that the percentage of tuskless elephants has shot up over time. And it just makes ample sense because you don't get hunted if you don't have tusks. And so what's happened over time is specifically one park in Mozambique has been observed, and the females especially have basically become tuskless elephants. Because if you don't have the tusks, you get to live and have babies. And so this huge selective pressure has just caused these elephants to become essentially tuskless.
It's so cool because we're using it. I'm sorry to burst the bubble that I knew this one,
Yeah,
but as
that's
a
okay.
biology instructor,
Right.
this is a very hot topic because
Right.
we're like, this is a current example of evolution
Yeah.
by natural selection
Yeah.
that we are observing.
And it could be a problem in the long term because elephants use those tusks. They
Yes.
have them for a reason. And they use it to dig up water. They use it to scrape bark off trees. And if this happens in males use it obviously for fighting and for establishing dominance. So for them, it has a whole other function and also for mate viability. So male elephants are under double pressure in opposite directions to one, if you don't have tusks, then you may not reproduce because you're not the preferred male of the species. But if you do have tusks, you get shot and you don't get to reproduce.
I was going to see if you had a guess as to why it's stronger in females versus males, because absolutely. So males have this sexual selection versus natural selection clashing against them.
So
tough call.
Yeah. So, but it's one of these distinguishing characteristics that you think of when you think of elephants is disappearing because basically we're hunting it out of them.
So sad.
It's very sad.
And the ivory is being taken for what? What do people use ivory for?
I have no idea.
Well, it used to be piano keys, but I think we just don't use that anymore as a material for sculptures, but also like to grind up for all sorts of things.
Yeah, it used to be like a decorative, like a rare, precious item for like piano keys, billiard balls.
Billiard balls.
Yeah.
It's just so sad. Killing such a giant, beautiful animal for one little part of it. Yeah. I don't understand.
And you know what? I don't have a problem of things made out of ivory if they're harvested after the elephant has died.
Of course.
Then that seems like perfectly ethical to me.
Sure.
But hunting for them just seems like
that's a big belief for you. Like that's why you have that leather jacket made from roadkill.
That's right. Yeah, I stitch it together several deer and raccoons, and it's really personal to me.
And I'm supportive of this.
Thank you. I use everything. It's got a couple plastic bags in there, but that's okay.
Reuse those too.
Yeah, reuse, roadkill.
Well, I know if this helps the elephant populations in the end.
I mean, I guess if our choice is no elephants or elephants without tusks, I'm pretty sure everyone's gonna go with being alive and not having tusks.
If the elephants could vote.
Yeah. That's my little fact.
Very cool. Excellent fact. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
Are you ready to receive some information?
Please download the information.
Okay. Mitochondria. What's a mitochondria, Vinny?
It's the powerhouse of the cell.
That is drilled into everyone's brains in Canada, at least. I know in elementary school, I feel like. What does that mean? What does it do?
But it's where I think the ATP gets generated.
Yeah. So like the currency our cells use to do stuff, to contract muscles, all sorts of things that your cells do. They need energy of a certain form, and they take food energy. That happens inside the mitochondria for organisms that have mitochondria. Right. And they twist it around and use it to make ATP.
Basically, for people of a certain age who watch a lot of Transformers, it's where the energon cubes of the cell are made.
Excellent. Now, did you know that mitochondria have their own DNA?
Yes, I did. And it's separate from like the human DNA, and it's basically a symbiotic kind of relationship.
Well, it's not. Well, that's how it happens. So
right.
The reason why our cells have mitochondria is that we had these two different single-celled organisms. One engulfed the other.
I wish people could see the hand gestures.
I don't think they're really adding to the story, but they help me. And then they use these little bacteria that use oxygen to make energy, and it's a very efficient process. And that became the mitochondria. Okay. It was a bacteria, now a little organ of our cells.
Cool.
Anyway. It has been noted that when you're stressed, this DNA that's in our mitochondria can leak out of the cell.
I think we go to the same sites.
These are both huge news stories.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
This week of October 20th. And it can be damaging. And so it's noted that people who have diseases or anything else that causes inflammation have elevated amounts of mitochondrial DNA. So you can use it as a marker for probability of some sort of issue with inflammation or that some stress has happened. You know where I'm going with this. Where am I going? Tell it to our audience, Vinny.
Well, I think it's if your mitochondrial DNA shows up in your body, it's often indicative of an amount of stress that you may be under from various sources. And in some cases, in specific cases where that's a really important thing to know, such as in astronauts, it's really important to know how stressed the human body can get.
Yes, so Vinny knows my fact. We knew each other's facts. It's the first time that's happened. Yeah.
But you're right. They're both pretty big news.
Yeah, they're huge. So what we're getting at, for those of you who've not read this article, is that it's been noted in astronauts very recently that they have higher levels of mitochondrial DNA in their blood floating free of the cells, indicating stress of space travel as being sort of a sign, perhaps a not as obvious sign of physiological stress. You know, they monitor all other sorts of things, but this is sort of a microscopic level indicator of stress, and this could indicate challenges to space travel if we have these. And in some cases, there's a huge range in how much increase, but it was up to 300 times more mitochondrial DNA than if they weren't in space.
Now, here's the question for you.
Oh, no.
You asked me some biological pressure questions. What are some stressors in space that you wouldn't have on Earth? I mean, yes, they're astronauts. They have a demanding schedule. They have, they're under a lot of pressure, and it's very exciting, so it's very stressful.
Yeah.
But, there are people on Earth who have very stressful and demanding jobs too. So what is it about space? What are some factors in space that might be extra?
I think you probably have a better answer to this, but just thinking of like William Shatner, who came back from being in space, he was like shook.
Yeah.
Like the existential
Sure.
Is existential stress a thing?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Being so acutely aware of how small you are and how big the universe is.
And how fragile existence.
I mean, I think that's got to cause. I don't think of that when I'm sitting on my couch.
Sure.
I ain't stressing about that.
No. But there's two other factors that come into play. One, lack of gravity on the human body.
That's amazing that would cause stress.
So many things you wouldn't think of on the human body.
We're built for that.
We're built for existing in a gravity environment. So existing in a zero gravity environment causes a lot of stress on the human body. Your sense of balance is entirely tuned to those little, those three little axes things that we have in our ears are all tuned to, they're tuned to existing in gravity well. And absent that, your body gets disoriented. It doesn't know which way is up. It doesn't know which way is down. So your blood circulation is geared to living in gravity. And so your whole body has to redistribute everything. All the stresses that your body is designed to withstand without thinking about it in gravity is absent, and your body has a hard time adjusting to it. Exercise in space is very difficult, but extremely necessary. Anyways, so the body undergoes all sorts of changes when it doesn't. It's like, where's this gravity that I'm used to? And
that's so interesting, because it would seem on the surface level, superficially, that not having gravity would make everything easier. You know, like it's so hard for like your feet to be pumping all those fluids back up. Wouldn't they just be having a nice little vacay, not having to worry about it?
But then you have other things like, how do plants grow with no gravity? How does the seed know which way is up?
Fascinating.
Or does it even use gravity? And these are all experiments that have been done. Yeah. The other big factor, so gravity is one factor, but the other and probably bigger factor.
This is Vinny's fact this
is
week.
Space radiation.
Right.
Because so much of the sun sends out so much radiation, UV, all this stuff. It's super damaging to the human body, but we're protected by the Earth's magnetic field. But it's much weaker up in space. And for interplanetary travel, you get no protection from Earth's magnetic field, and you just get irradiated like madly, and it causes a ton of DNA damage.
Right.
So, and this is probably the more significant factor, which is just radiation from being in space damaging all the cells in your body.
So hearing this, I mean, we've asked each other if we would go to space if we could. Does this make you think about it?
Less or more?
Like, you're more interested in going?
Yeah, I need more mitochondrial DNA.
That's a fascinating motivator.
No, I mean, most of these are built with some radioactive shielding because it's a known problem. But if you're like going to, like a mission to Mars that would last months and months, you'd have to have some serious radiation shielding.
That's not the question.
But would I want to go more into space?
Do you still want to go to space?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I'll go to space.
So Vinny won't be recording the next couple weeks. We're shooting him out in a rocket.
Oh, whoa.
We'll report back on it here.
All right. That'll be my science fact.
That'll be huge.
Yeah.
We're going to do an experiment live on Learn Real Good where we check.
Total rando from Montreal goes to space.
Total rando. No, you're the co-host of a
Learn
podcast. There's dozens of listeners.
Dozens of us.
Dozens of them. All right. That's enough goofing around.
Okay, so we should bring our guest out.
Yes.
I'm really excited.
I am so excited.
So today's guest is Claire Mindus. Completed her MSc in animal science in France in 2015, and then she decided to continue her work on feather pecking by joining Dr. Harlander's team at the University of Guelph in 2017 as a PhD student in animal biosciences. She explored the use of probiotic bacteria to reduce the feather pecking in chickens. She successfully defended her PhD this past month. And is now conducting welfare research projects at the French Livestock Institute. Bienvenue, Claire.
Thank you so much. And I can already tell you, I've learned a lot. Listening to those 15 minutes.
It's an exchange. You're
Yeah.
gonna teach us some stuff. We taught you some stuff.
Well, I hope so, at least from my part.
Invariably, you will.
Yeah.
Welcome, Claire. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, we're super excited. Now, I am so excited to learn about your research.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start maybe talking about why do chickens peck each other to begin with? What's going on there?
Well, that is the question. It's actually, we don't know.
Oh.
People have been doing research on that specific behavior for more than 70 years now, and we still don't know what causes it, what are the reasons, and that's why it is considered as a stereotypy. Because we can't explain it. So there's a few hypotheses here and there. For example, the pecking and ingesting those feathers could be a source of fibers that might be lacking in the feed, but even with an appropriate diet, you can still see the behavior. So it's unclear, and that's why we're still doing research on it. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So maybe you can just explain what feather, like are chickens just randomly going around to other chickens and plucking the feathers out of them?
Yeah, so it's basically that what it is. It's one what we observe it a lot in laying hens, but also in other species. My PhD was on laying hens, so like you have a hen pecking and plucking the feathers from other birds. They don't do it to themselves, so
Okay.
it's very like some birds are targeted as victims and they get pecked, and it's very hard. Like the behavior, there's a lot of force in the way they pluck the feathers, and it can lead to obviously feather loss, feather damage, but also skin injuries. So it's very problematic for the bird, but also for the farmer, as you can imagine.
Right.
And also, in the worst cases, it can lead to cannibalism and
Ooh.
so death. So in those cases, it's a huge issue because it's a behavior that they learn watching other birds like doing, so it can spread within a flock and it can be dramatic when it starts. So the idea is to be able to contain it or prevent it would be the best.
Wow.
Are there any signs that it's sort of genetically based? Like if your mother was a feather pecker?
Your mother was a feather pecker.
Classic insult.
Yeah, so it is. There is a bit of genetic, like a genetic part. It is. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's slightly heritable. And for example, we are working in my lab, but also like other labs in Europe, on lines that were like selected for either high amounts of feather pecking behavior or low amounts of feather pecking behavior. So we are able to, select the birds. The issue and why it hasn't been done in the industry is that it's actually negatively correlated with egg laying, so the performances. So there is kind of an issue there.
Wow.
So
Whoa.
feather peckers give
Yeah.
better eggs? Is that the headline?
They
Or
lay
more eggs?
more and bigger
Wow.
eggs too.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not that easy.
Whoa, that's fascinating.
What a twisted web. So would your guess be that something about the nutritive benefit of the feathers is better for making eggs, or like what would be that positive relationship?
I don't know about that because they don't necessarily eat the feathers.
Okay.
Like that ingestion can be or not be there.
Okay.
It's not considered as part of the behavior, if you want. But who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe just all of that aggression comes out in
Yes.
the egg.
Would you think, because isn't stress typically bad for laying eggs? So you'd think that if you're living in this
Well, it's the
feather
people.
pecking
It's the
society.
people. It's the chickens that are doing the pecking that are laying the bigger eggs, if I'm understanding.
Yes.
So yeah, it's not receiving the pecking that makes you better. It's the giving of the pecks.
If I'm a feather pecker, okay, which I've been accused of being.
Several
I feel
times.
like I'd be stressed too. I'm living in this feather pecker society, even if I'm the top feather pecker.
Well, that's actually what I was looking at too, because I was looking at like a lot of physiological mechanisms to see how do they react to specific, situations and how are their stress levels. And like, so there's a lot to look at there.
Hmm.
So let's hear about that. So what was the stress situation like if you were being feather pecked or if you were a feather pecker? Were they all stressed or feather peckers weren't stressed?
Well, we found out that they are less stressed.
Huh.
And so like we use, specific tests that can help us. Well, I mean, our tests were more about fear, but it does give you
Hmm.
also an idea of, the stress reaction, let's say, how you cope with a stressful situation. And they are less fearful from
Hmm.
like the use of that specific test,
Okay.
which is called like the tonic immobility. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a really cool test. You basically pretend to be a predator for the bird,
Okay.
and for those species, the way they usually cope with it is when they are fearful, they pretend to be dead, and so they don't move. They just it's I don't know how to describe it, but it's very surprising when you don't expect it. So you put the bird on its back, and you just look at how long it takes the bird to go back on its feet. And
Oh.
the length of this tonic immobility, because they're not sleeping, they're being alert, but they just are freezing. And
Wow.
that tells you that gives you an indication about their fear levels.
Wow. Testing fear in chickens.
Now, Claire, I'm imagining that when you're pretending to be a chicken predator, you're putting on some sort of wolf suit,
No.
and then you jump out there, and you're like,
Like some
please,
Halloween
please,
haunted house for
please
chickens.
tell me that this dream is true.
No, I just need to be like as I am because I'm like apparently big and scary enough.
Okay.
I'm not very big, but not very tall either. But
Was that like a confounding variable, like scariness in appearance of scientist and perceived predation pressure? Like if you're adorable as you are, Claire, with a little scarf, are they going to be more likely to be like, she ain't going to hurt us versus someone, with, I
well,
don't
it
know.
could definitely be though. But like we have ways of like statistically like take care of that. So like you have to
Right.
avoid confounds. So yeah.
Potential confounding variable, adorability of predator.
Well, I wouldn't be very efficient, but
This is very cool.
Yes, it's very fascinating. And so, yeah, I guess all of these behaviors, I mean, the reason we want to learn about it is for chicken farming, I presume.
absolutely, because of the welfare of the birds, first
Right.
of all. But also it has an economical impact on the farm level because those birds who are being pegged, obviously they're not going to have a great egg production.
Mhm.
If it leads to skin injuries, like for their health, it's not great. If it leads to cannibalism, like you can lose so many birds that,
Right.
and birds which are presenting, let's say, a situation which is maybe less drastic than what I'm explaining, just like feather loss, where for their thermoregulation, it has an impact as well,
Wow.
because they don't have that coverage that protects them, so they tend to eat more to compensate the heat loss.
Oh,
So all of this is linked and
yeah.
has a cost for the
Mm-hmm.
farm and also for the let's say like how people perceive like the industry and farming. When you have featherless chickens, it's not great. So
Right.
like it's a win-win for everyone if we can manage
Yeah.
to get rid of that behavior or at least be able to deal with it in a proper way.
Was there any sort of impact of density? Like we know of nowadays all these industrial farms where chickens are sort of crammed into a tiny, tiny space versus free range chickens. Was there any sort of effect of that on feather pecking that you know of?
So feather pecking is what we called a multifactorial behavior. So it means that pretty much anything could be a
Hmm.
factor, like a risk factor. So of course, like yeah, that's what you would tend to think, and density is definitely a factor for it. But at the same time, you can observe the behavior in like backyard chickens that are,
Hmm.
like what you think is living the life, like they have so much space and they're just like, I don't know, 5 to 10 chickens maybe, and they can develop the behavior as well.
Hmm.
So it's still unclear. Like we know some triggers for sure. Like we know stress, for example, is a major trigger, and stress can be many, many things, right?
Hmm.
It could be one day you have your lights that are broken, and so like the light like schedule, is disturbed, or it could be like, I don't know, like a human that they don't know that goes into the flock or anything pretty much. And that can trigger the behavior. So density is definitely one of them, but we don't know what exactly and how much of everything. And even when they are given what we as humans assume is, the best like level of welfare possible, it can still appear.
Hmm.
Wow. So it feels like chickens are just like a clucking time bomb.
Well, what we were looking at in my research is instead of looking at the environment, let's look at what's inside, and maybe there's a dysregulation of,
Hmm.
something in the physiology that could explain it. So that's a different way to look at it. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so the other component is probiotic bacteria and their, I guess, effect, I'm assuming, to mitigate this behavior or
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so first
Yeah.
what is a probiotic? We always hear about probiotics
Yeah.
in my yogurt in
And
particular.
we hear about
Yeah.
antibiotic bacteria.
They fight each other.
Yeah, probiotic and antibiotic.
Yes, they're the two political parties of bacteria.
We want to hear about the pros.
Yeah, what makes a bacteria probiotic?
Probiotics don't necessarily are just bacteria, but it's basically a microorganism which is beneficial for you if you ingest it in the right amount. Because
Hmm.
as you know, like if you take too much of anything, it's not going to be
Right.
good for you. So that's, yeah, anything like a microorganism that's good for you when properly ingested.
You can feed chickens some of these bacteria and hopefully it'll influence their behavior.
Exactly, that's what we did, and it works. Like we tried different, ways to give it to them, and we tried different strategies, and we definitely observed an impact on their behavior. So there's a lot of promises for future research there to go
Wow.
further.
Wow. See, my guess in terms of the link between the probiotic bacteria and the feather pecking was going to be like a measure to treat them afterwards. Like if I took a feather pecked chicken and I gave it probiotic bacteria, it just wouldn't have an infection and that thus nullifying some of the negative effects. But you're saying that giving probiotic bacteria made the chickens not be feather peckers?
Yeah, so we
Whoa.
tried different strategies, like as a prevention, or as a curative strategy, or as how do we call the last one? A continuous strategy. So where we give it to them and then we stress them to trigger the behavior, and we give it to so before and during the stress. And so like each strategy had some effects, some like bigger than others, but we definitely see a link on how the microbiota can have an impact on the behavior. So that's,
That's
yeah.
amazing. I mean, this is one of the, I guess, new fields that has a lot of potential to unlock
Oh
so
yeah.
many biological health implications, which is gut biomes, and how the link between what we eat and how our internal biology, the biome that's going on in there, affects our behavior. And it's fascinating to see this evolution, and
Oh yeah.
in other species too.
Exactly. Like it comes from human research, right? We're discovering so much for humans how our microbiota can be linked, for example, to depression or anxiety, and how we can
Wow.
play on that by, like ingesting probiotics as well. And so that's kind of how this idea of this research started, is comparing what we can do in other species, and okay, maybe we can apply it in chickens because we had some facts telling us that okay, maybe that's how it works for them too.
Hmm.
And do we have any ideas at this point as to how eating a bacteria makes you be nicer? Like, do we know what that link is between behavior and something you're eating?
Yeah, so we have some ideas for sure. They may differ between species because like the physiology is not necessarily the same. But basically, ingesting a specific species, let's say, like if you only take one species of bacteria, it can first of all have consequences on other species of bacteria that are already in your
Interesting.
gastrointestinal tract. So it can modify, like how many different species and how many of bacteria within that species you have. And for example, for the bacteria that we were using, we know that they can influence the immune system. So basically, they can make your immune system stronger and more, make you more healthy in that way. They can also have an influence of your neurotransmission.
Hmm.
And so when you think about that, then you link the gut directly with your brain and neurotransmission with your behavior. So those are good ideas of how it can impact everything.
Unbelievable.
And
Yeah.
so, what are the bacteria that you feed to chickens that changes their behavior?
So we used a specific strain of lactobacillus. And those lactobacillus, so they are they're if you look at your yogurts, definitely you're going to see them in there because they are like very much used for us.
Hmm.
And why we use those is because we, like previous research, like before me, found out that those severe feather peckers, so the birds who were pecking, actually were lacking those bacteria compared to
Whoa.
birds who were not pecking.
Wow.
So that's crazy when you think about it,
No
right? You
kidding.
like
So, did you have like birdseed flavored yogurt?
no, no, we found, I mean, that would be also
And have you
something we
tried
could
it?
do.
Yeah.
I actually did not try it. I was so curious the entire time, but slightly scared too. I don't. I mean, it's perfectly fine to consume, but I never did it. But no, we got the bacteria as a powder,
Mm,
and so we just diluted it in water, and in
mm,
that way, that was easy to give to the birds.
of course.
Wow. And do you think this could be transferable to humans, Claire? Like if I fed Vinny more yogurt, would he
Hmm.
stop feather pecking, do you think?
I love feather pecking.
I would say it all depends what's actually in your yogurt.
Uh,
Mm.
Because, between what's on the packaging and what's really in
right.
there, sometimes it can differ.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, yeah, there's some research saying that, for example, like there's a lot of probiotics like products on
Mm-hmm.
like in the shelves on in the grocery stores. And those compared to what they say they have, apparently it's way lower in terms
Oh,
of
Yeah.
wow.
the amount of microorganism in
I
there.
can't
So
believe it. The
yeah.
food is mislabeled. It can't. They're lying to me again.
I'm starting to think that giant bottle of Yop may not have any probiotic
Yeah.
I mean,
components.
it can't be that bad, right? It can only be good for you, I
Right.
assume.
Right. Yeah. I think Katie, you're gonna have to order the powder and slip it into my water bottle.
Okay. I'm on it. Wow, this is very cool research.
Yeah.
So
It's yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say it's so cool, but it's also so complicated because everything is
Yes.
linked and it's so many, different topics to link together.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I'm sure the statistics must be fun trying to pull apart all these causal factors.
absolutely. But I
Yikes.
love statistics, so that's fine.
Nice. We'll
Nice.
leave it to you, Claire, to tease it apart. So so you have a long background in animal science, right? You did your master's in it. I know that's what you're doing now after your PhD. So where did this love of animal science come from, Claire?
Since I was a child, I actually wanted to be a vet,
Oh.
Hmm.
and I passed in France, so like it's a bit different than the schooling system in Canada. I mean, we have universities, but we also have like other very traditional system where you do. I mean, maybe you've heard of it, but you do like a class préparatoire. So it's like two
Hmm.
years of very intensive
Hmm.
classes on different topics, and I took like a lot of biology amongst other things. And after those 2 years, you have an exam which can lead you to either like vet school or we have agricultural schools. And so, unfortunately, I failed vet school.
Mm.
So
That
I
happens.
went for an agriculture school where I took classes for about animal production, and I knew I wanted to keep that link with animals, and so I went that, and then I did internships in research, and I started to, like find my way like that. So, and I'm working. I mean, I love what I'm doing right now, and I'm actually working with vets. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I could have been
Yeah.
doing if I were a vet. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot of times we can, as academics, you're like on a success track where you do things. It's like, I'm going to go through this hoop, and I'm going to go through this thing, and every turn we want to, it can feel like very binary in the fact that if I don't clear this, then it's my career in science isn't going to go forward. But there's so many options, and to hear you say that you did the exam, it didn't work out for you, and you're still working in the field that you like. I mean, there's so many options and so many paths
exactly.
in
And like paths
academia.
sometimes you don't know about, right? Like because they
Hmm.
are less advertised than
Yes.
the major ones. And for me, it was so important because when I failed vet school, I was, looking into those agriculture schools, and I was, okay, maybe I can still do what I want through that. And because I heard some people talking about their paths and studies and what they did. And so that's definitely something, for the people listening to that podcast, if that can
Mm-hmm.
help, like it's not because you fail in doing something that you can do it using another way.
Mm-hmm.
There's, yeah, as you said, so many different ways to achieve what you want.
Yeah, it's not that if you're interested and you love animals and you want to protect them, it's not one possible job, right? It's a whole diversity of things you can do with that passion.
Exactly.
And I think there's it just people going into academia, young people going into sciences have like maybe a very narrow vision of like what your possibilities are and what your options are. And mostly because it's not because there is only one path, it's just because the other paths aren't well promoted or prioritized. Like there are so many ways of doing things.
Well, think of the jobs you see on TV, right?
Right.
How many lawyer and surgeon shows are there? There's not a lot of shows with, well, Schitt's Creek had a vet on it, but I mean, you don't see a lot of diversity in careers. When do you see
Right.
a researcher on TV?
Yeah.
Not often.
Yeah.
I guess Big Bang Theory had physicists, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
But you just don't see these possibilities.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's true. It's a bit sad because, sometimes you have like really, really interesting jobs um,
Hmm.
that just are not well known. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the goal of this podcast, to
Yeah.
show off other disciplines.
And so, I guess, Claire, I want to ask you: what is it about animals that made you want to be a vet? Did you like grow up around animals? Or are you just someone who loves animals?
I love animals, and I was born in the suburb of Paris, so not really in a farm, not really in the countryside. No,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know, I was always there. And the funny part is I'm always slightly scared of animals as well, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Aha.
So like I just need a bit of time to get used to them. And I'm always, wary. But it doesn't prevent me to work with them and work for them mostly.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was always there, and I can't really explain why. I would say mostly because I don't want to work with humans.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, I
Yeah.
have to, but I wouldn't want to be a doctor, for example.
Right.
I feel that. As an ecologist, I feel that. I had the same reaction.
Humans. No, thank you.
Yep. Animals, please. That's so nice to hear, though. You always hear that cliched thing of, I was surrounded by dogs. I was raised by dogs. I wanted to protect dogs. To hear of someone who's sort of from the city, who's also afraid of animals, who still had a passion for it. That's sort of an
Yeah.
awesome story to have.
It
Yeah.
doesn't seem too compatible, but somehow it works.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you,
Yeah,
Claire.
absolutely.
And so why chickens? Has it always been chickens for you?
No, it was always farm animals. That was
Okay.
something I was really sure about. And I started I've worked with many, many species because I did a gap year, and the goal of that gap year was to do so many internships in the idea of trying different, like structures or animal species and type of jobs. And then I started working with pigs at the end of my master. And after that, I started working with chickens. So doing research for chickens in France. And that's what led me to that PhD after, because it had like how would you say it made sense based on the topic of the research.
Yeah.
But I mean, now I've left the chickens and I've moved to cows and goats and sheep, so very
Wow.
different. And
Whoa.
I
Hooves.
feel like I know nothing again.
That's great, right? You come in there with those fresh eyes, all those fresh
Exactly.
new animals.
Now, are you scared of the goats and sheep?
Well, the cows are big, you know.
Cows are big. Cows are very big.
Yeah, I'd be scared of a cow.
But I'll get used to them, I'm sure.
So so now you've just finished your PhD. You're fresh off of that. So congrats, Dr. Mindus.
Yes.
You.
So now you're at the French Livestock Institute. What are you working on now? I mean you're brand new on the job.
Actually, hang on. I want to know what the French Livestock Institute is.
Yeah.
Well, it's an association working as a company, and they do research and development for the French ruminants farming system. So that's why I'm working on cows, goats, sheep, and maybe a bit of horses. Not sure, but yeah. So they do like research projects and development projects.
Wow.
Very cool. And so what are your current questions or what are you working on right now there?
So I'm working on all levels, for example, on farms, on transport, and on slaughter as well. So for example, on farms, we're looking at how can we assess welfare of young or not so young, but calves, for meat calves, because they are usually kept in well, I'm not used to speak about that in English, so I'm gonna look for my
That's
words
okay.
a bit. But
It's okay. Yeah. Take your time.
they are kept in systems where, because they're mostly males, the farmers at some point cannot go inside the pens with the animals because it would be too dangerous for them. So
Oh.
we're looking at a way on how they can assess the welfare of the animals in a simplified way and from the outside of the pens. And at the same time, we're looking at the use of artificial intelligence. So
Whoa.
using cameras and how can we understand, for example, the behavior of the animals and what can it tell us automatically. So that's an example of a project. So yeah, it's the idea of this company is very much applied. It's to help, farming. And so it's nice to see that you're working on something that can help farmers and animals.
Hmm.
Wow, this sounds like the greatest job for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's perfect.
Sounds like a great match.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although those horses, no, that's an animal that scares
Yeah,
me.
Claire, I will tell you, a horse is bigger than a cow, so be careful.
Yeah.
Unless they're the miniature horses. Are they the miniature horses?
I don't think they are, but like I haven't seen any projects on horses yet. So like yeah.
Not a lot of ponies on farms.
That may be true.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, so it seems like you're set up then. We usually ask our guests like what does the future hold? So do you feel like this is where you plan to stay working for the next little while, or do you see sort of something beyond this?
Yeah. So like during my PhD, I've started to look actually quite early for a job because I was curious about, what was on the market, what type of jobs, and also I wanted to practice interviews to be ready when the real one would be there, like the really interesting jobs. So I've been looking for a year before to graduate. And so I've been in touch with that company for 6 months before I started. And I wouldn't leave Canada for, anything, like, because I truly loved my life there. So yeah, I'm planning to spend, I don't know how many years with them, but we'll see, right? It's hard to know.
I think it's one of the underrated skills of a researcher is just being able to establish relationships. Like interviewing is a key skill to be able to make an impression on people when you first meet them. To if you want to work with an establishment and establish a relationship with someone in there, that's a huge step. And taking that time to make those connections, and that's one of the key things about academia is like half of it is like who you know, and then establishing your relationship within that organization, getting along with people.
Creating
It's
your
important.
network.
Creating your network.
Yeah, that's a very important, underappreciated skill, I think. I know when I was an undergrad, it was very common for the people who were very socially awkward, like myself, to be like, well, I'll just go to science where I can be in a lab coat
Right.
and be in a closet and everyone will leave me alone. And I don't need to be good at making
Right.
those
Human soft skills, supposedly.
yeah, those shallow relationships, those networking relationships. And it's not true. Like, you need to be a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be a good networker for success in, I think, most things, but it's almost especially academia.
But I mean, it's a human organization. Relationships are always going to, be the key factor in how organizations grow, evolve, meet people, and you can connect with them. Because, if it's a human-run organization, you need to be able to have a human relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And even more now, I would say, when research is looking at topics from a different eye, like we start to understand how everything is linked, and so we have to create association or like with people who don't work necessarily in our field, but because we know that what they are researching is going to be linked somehow with what we do, and so we have to be able to translate our work in a way that people who work very much differently from what we do can understand it. And so like it's way more social than you would think, and those networking skills are super important.
Now, can I ask Claire, was little Claire someone who wanted to work with animals and then realized, I have to go through science? Or was little Claire someone who's like, I want to work with animals and I get to do science?
I would not so much, I think. I mean, I've always been into biology, that's for sure. But for example, I always hated physics, like
Sure. Understandable.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's very normal. Lots of physicists hate it too.
But
He's a self-hating physicist.
My interest for research though came I don't know if that's early or not, but like once I left high school, for example, and I started to learn more about it, that really developed. But mostly it was animal behavior that got me where I am, and then it led to welfare as a whole.
Animal behavior is very cool too.
Yeah.
That's what I was focused on that too in my undergrad research. I found that cool.
Birds.
Yeah.
Bird nest parasitism, but also like fish sneaker males. I always thought that was a really cool story.
There's so much that is amazing too. Yeah.
What are you into, Claire, outside of the farm? So what else? What are some of your other interests?
Some non-animal related
hobbies or pastimes?
I'm a real couch potato.
Nice.
We relate.
Yeah, I love, my Netflix and chill. I love also eating, so I spend a lot of time, outside, just like in bars or restaurants. That's very, that's what makes me happy, really. And I love to just go outside for walks usually, and travel. But these days it's a bit
tough
like
now.
Yeah, that's also one part of what I was happy to be back in France. It's like it's a tinier country, and it's very much easier compared to Canada to be able to just go for a weekend in a tiny village and feel like it's a holiday. So I'm happy about that. I'm gonna miss many things, but I was happy about that.
Very nice. I think we would get along great, Claire. I think we would list our interests as couch potatoes.
Eating food.
Eating. And the occasional walk. In between bouts of eating.
Yeah, to feel good about yourself, right?
That's right.
Yeah, like livestock, really.
Yeah, we are livestock. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I relate. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they have a great life. Well, what if we tried showing them Netflix? That could reduce feather pecking, maybe.
Well, yeah, give Vinny credit for that hypothesis. That's a good one.
Yeah, I will.
Netflix for chickens.
You will for sure be in my admonishments.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice. Well, Claire, this has been a fantastic chat. Thank you so much for meeting with us. Your research is super cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to help, not just chickens, but, it affects people too.
Yeah.
Happy chickens, happy people.
Yeah,
I've always said that.
I hope it will, like I think it gives a lot of ideas for the future and where to go. And thank you guys so much for inviting me to talk about it. It's great.
Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
we had a
you.
great time. Thanks, Claire. How
Wow.
amazing was that?
It's so cool.
Feather pecking.
Yeah,
That's.
I knew it was a thing.
I didn't know it was a thing at all.
I would have assumed it was like 100% just stress. Like if you
Right.
had chickens in an industrial farm, they're just like anything when it's kept in high density, it acts bizarre.
Sure.
Like newts. So I studied newts for my master's,
Okay.
and I was doing experiments with larvae, and salamanders and newts are pretty famous for
For many things.
not much actually. Anyway, but here's one thing that they're famous-ish for is that they can switch to a cannibalistic morph as a
Okay.
larva under certain circumstances where you can tell that they're a cannibal. Their head becomes they sort of like become the Hulk, like they become
Really?
gigantic. Yeah. And but they would almost only do it under high stress,
High density
artificial
stress? Okay.
situations. They put them in an aquarium and they act like maniacs, but
Okay.
in nature it can happen, but it's pretty rare.
Wow.
Anyway, so I assumed like that connection, but
Instead it was just a lack of yogurt.
not quite. Let's not spread that.
No, is that it?
all these urban agriculturalists in Montreal with chickens on their roofs getting
Trying to
out
give them yogurt.
the Activia containers.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, animals, huh?
I love it when you can do something really cool with animal behavior and there's such an obvious application to it. It's
Right.
not just this is neat. Not that that's not valid either. It's like, wow, this has an impact.
It has an
on
impact on how
not just
humans
their
act
behavior,
and
their well-being,
welfare,
which
yeah.
matters, but also just like agriculture and everything.
Amazing.
Very cool. I could have asked a billion questions
Me
about these
too.
chickens. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is a fun episode.
Yeah.
We shared facts we both already knew. Because we're constantly on the hunt for facts now. It's harder and harder.
I'm gonna have to dig
surprise.
deep. I'm gonna have to go to the underground science journals now.
I wonder if the chicken's mitochondrial DNA was being
they went to
released.
space.
I was gonna say because they were stressed, right?
Stressed, right?
Not from space.
They went to space too,
From
probably.
lack of yogurt.
Maybe the chickens have a spaceship that we don't know about.
I'll save that for the next episode. We'll resolve that.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to Claire for being awesome.
And if you want to find us on social media, you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LRG Pod. That's LRG Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And we're always recording. So if you're a grad student who's interested, you're like, hey, I could do this. What should they do, Vinny?
You want to try that again?
And if you're a grad student and you're out there saying, hey, I'd love to be a guest on this show, what should they do, Vinny?
You can email us at learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. Learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. Where all good emails go.
True. No spam yet. All right. Thanks, folks. Have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
everybody.
Bye-bye.